And good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's IT Career in Australia show. And today our topic is artificial intelligence and the future of work in IT industry. So thank you for finding some time to join me this evening. Please don't forget to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know what you do and join our conversation with your questions and comments. Or at least say hi, because it's nice that, we know that you're here. So I'm Jana Martins, and I'm currently working in IT consultancy. So I'm responsible for leading people's function there. And I'm passionate about learning more about present and future of tech industry. So always eager to share my new findings with you on this YouTube channel. So tonight, as I said, we're going to talk about artificial intelligence and the future of work in the IT industry. And Scott going to share his thoughts on AI, what skills we need in order to navigate our way forward, and how we can deal with these uncertain times and a lot of disruptive things happening around us. So please tag or share this video with your colleagues and friends who need to hear this. And before I'll pass it over to Scott to introduce himself, just want to remind you that we're streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So if you miss the stream, no worries. You can watch the replays on my YouTube channel, IT Career in Australia. Make sure to subscribe. So I go live there every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Melbourne time. And we talk about things like IT career, job search, and in and outs of tech industry in Australia. And you can also join my meetup group if you want to make sure you never miss the next show. So please use this live stream as the opportunity to not only learn something new, but network with people in the industry. And please ask as many questions as you like on any platform, but please stay on the topic. Yeah, let's not just, talk about anything. And the most active participants will receive a nice surprise at the end of the stream. So guys, I can't really see you saying hi in the comments, and it's upsetting me because, I know you're watching.
And it's upsetting me too. It's upsetting me. It's upsetting your guest, Jana. Where are all these people you promised?
I know. Guys, you see, make sure to say hi. And Scott, please tell a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Scott Bolland, and my background's in an area of study called cognitive science, which is the scientific study of how the mind works, spanning such fields as psychology, neuroscience, philosophy, and artificial intelligence. So my PhD actually was on human creativity modeled by artificial intelligence about 20 years ago. What I do these days, I spend half my time in ed tech using artificial intelligence in education, and the other half I actually work in leadership development and coaching. So what does science tell us about human flourishing at an individual, team, and an organizational level, and how to do it? And I guess today I'm kind of talking about the intersection between these areas. So, what is artificial intelligence? What's the impact on the workforce? And what can we do to actually survive in these times of uncertainty and disruption? Yep.
And you see, it worked. We ask people to say hi, and they hear. Thank you, Yatin, Rikas. Thank you, guys, for saying hi. Also, if you have an interesting name on the YouTube, you probably want to put your name in the comments so we don't call you by your nickname. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. So Scott, just firstly, just a little bit more about yourself in terms of why are you talking about this topic? Why it's important for you to talk about, artificial intelligence and the future of work?
I think it's the topic at this point in time, to be honest. My interest is really in human flourishing. So what do we need to be doing as humans to flourish in life? And AI is one of the most disruptive powers at this point in time that's going to shape the way we move forward. So in terms of, it has, as I said, half my time is actually spent in ed tech, harnessing the power of AI in a positive way, but there are all of these negative potential impacts as well. So in the back of my mind, as I said, I really care about human flourishing, how to harness the power of AI for good, but at the same time, you have to be realistic, particularly in things like navigating the next 10 years or 20 years. It's going to be really interesting times or difficult times for a lot of people, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you've been talking about this topic quite a lot at a different conference. That's actually how we met.
That's right.
So, and at one of the conferences, after Scott's presentation. So I probably let you run a little bit about, with your presentation without interrupting you for like next 10 minutes, because I know you have a few interesting slides that showing us a little bit about like, history lesson on AI and where it's basically getting us at the moment. So like, I'll let you just do your thing for next 10 minutes.
Yeah, so I did want to start with a bit of an overview of AI. Oops, where are we? Sorry, just give me 1 second and press the right buttons. There we are.
Okay. So fancy. Look at that.
This is actually using AI for getting rid of the background. Isn't that cool?
So anyway, you have streaming in the streaming today.
That's true. I stream in the streaming. So I actually wanted to start, Jana, this is something that interested you, but start with a bit of, I guess, Greek mythology, because a lot of the issues that we're going to be talking about today have been talked about for many, many, many years, dating right back to Greek mythology. And there's this myth of Prometheus, who basically created man out of clay, and he breathed life into this clay sculpture that turned into man. And then he actually stole fire from the gods and gave it to man, which actually led to this rapid progress and advancement. And what was actually interesting, of course, Zeus got pissed off about this, and out of this disobedience, Zeus created Pandora, which was actually the first woman. So, of course, we know about Pandora. She was sent to Earth with this box, which contained all of the evils of the world, and was told not to open the box. And, of course, she got curious and opened the box and released all the evils to the world, apart from what was left in the box that was actually hope. So how this actually translates to today's context is really this issue of technology and curiosity, and this is unleashing all of these potential evils on the world through, following our curiosity and innovation. And so when we discuss, I guess, technology, we need to look at both of these sides. So what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish in terms of the social good, but what might we be unleashing on the side as a negative byproduct? And in the field of AI, there's a lot of discussion around, well, what is it that we're actually unleashing through these technologies? One of my favorite quotes is from Marvin Minsky, who's one of the founding fathers of AI. And he said, once the computers got control, we might never get it back. If we're lucky, they might decide to keep us as pets. So this is one of the founding fathers of AI saying, if we're lucky, they might decide to keep us as pets. And if you listen to Elon Musk, his discourse is very similar. But this is something that Marvin Minsky said in 1970. So this is 50 years ago. And AI has been around as a field for about 70 years. So what I really wanted to talk about...
This sounds a bit unpromising.
Well, I wouldn't actually mind being kept as a pet, to be honest. So about 80% of the current workforce is disengaged. So a lot of people would actually not mind to be on a permanent holiday. I don't know. So the question is, we can't predict really what this future is going to be. The best we can do is, with this uncertainty, what are the skills we need to flourish in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's what I'm really going to be talking about. I don't know what the future is. If what's going to happen in 50 years' time, nobody knows. Hopefully they'll keep us as pets. That doesn't sound too bad. But then there's all of these, questions of what do we need to flourish in life, in terms of we kind of need meaning and purpose. And if everything's done for us, is that a really nice life anyway? So I don't know. I don't want to talk about that because it's opening its own can of worms going into what the future may hold.
As long as they take me for a walk to the beach, I'll be fine.
Yeah. And that might be interesting, as I said, but you might be doing that through virtual reality. Who knows? You might not need actually a walk anywhere. But as I said, let's just deal with the next 5 to 10 years, because the future itself, we have no idea about. But so, as I said, what today is really about is talking through some of these issues of what is AI? What is the state of the art? What does this actually mean for the workforce? And predicting ahead, what are the skills that we actually need to survive in these times of uncertainty? So what I wanted to actually go back to is a few years ago, because it actually is quite telling in terms of what happened recently and what's going to happen in our near future. So I don't know if you can remember year 2020, which is when COVID hit, right? So just before COVID, there was this wonderful meme going out around about Happy New Year 2020. It's the year of perfect vision. So there's this hype about how wonderful 2020 was going to be. And there was this sort of expectation that 2020 would be the year of perfect vision. It'd be all rainbows and lollipops and unicorns. And instead of rainbows and lollipops and unicorns, we kind of got this. It was kind of, we all got COVID, and it's kind of like, we're in this dumpster and the dumpster's on fire, and not only is it on fire, it's in a flood. But in retrospect, maybe we were actually right all along. Maybe 2020 was the year of perfect vision, in the sense that maybe the future isn't all rainbows and lollipops and unicorns. Maybe the future ahead is more like this. It's what we call VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that's really the point I'm trying to make here, is projecting forward the years ahead. We have so much disruption and uncertainty, and it's the people who can actually deal with the VUCA environment are the ones that are going to flourish. So a lot of my talk today is what are the skills that are required. And why I think that the future is kind of more like this than rainbows and lollipops is that COVID was the first time we'd really personally experienced exponential change. So, it's one person gets COVID, two people get COVID, 4, 8, etc. It's this exponential growth curve. But a lot of things that are happening in our environment are actually exponential in nature. So we have things like world population that's kind of exponential. We have environmental impact that's exponential. And of course, now we have technology that's exponential. This is actually a logarithmic chart over the side. It looks linear, but it's actually exponential. So, computer speeds and power double every 18 months or so. So it's this rapid, ongoing growth of technology that is exponential in nature. And particularly with AI, we're starting to see the real impacts on humanity. So up until about 10 years ago, we were in what was called the AI winter, where there was this lot of hype about what AI was capable of. And in the last 10 years, we're actually starting to see AI outperforming humans in a wide range of tasks. So, for example, it's all of these games that we consider to be exemplars of human intelligence, such as chess. Of course, AI has beat the chess champion. 2011, it's beaten the world Jeopardy champion. IBM Watson did that. And more recently, we have Lee Sedol being beaten by AlphaGo at Go, which was supposed to be one of the most complex games that we can play. And again, all of those were overtaken by AI. So our conception of human intelligence, at least in the gaming world, we're seeing that now the world champions in a lot of these areas are actually artificial intelligence entities. But actually, in terms of the workforce, we see things like retail and sales being overcome by automation. So here's Alibaba's warehouse, where I think 70% of jobs are now done by machines. Moving along, we're seeing robots outside of the factory. So this is just an example of a bricklaying robot that can, lay in 2 hours what a human can lay in 2 days, kind of thing. And we've got Boston Dynamics. If you have a look at their stuff, it's pretty amazing in terms of, as a humanoid robot, you might be able to do this sort of stuff with your background in acrobatics and stuff, but I definitely can't, right? So someone like me trying to do what these things are capable of. Whoops, let's just see. There we go. And the guy on the left, is pretty proud of himself. Yeah. So the point now is we're actually starting to see machines having human-like capability.
Jason was saying, don't forget the pocket and
I know. I mean, it's happening everywhere, and that's the point. It's this exponential growth curve. So this is just the beginning, and that's the worrying part. is that it is exponential in nature. And of course, we're seeing generative AI is really making a huge impact these days. So for example, here is it generating faces trained on thousands of faces. None of these are people that exist in the real world. And this can be used for a whole range of things, such as designing interior design, cars, all those sorts of things. So that's generative AI doing what we thought a lot of lay people thought AI would never do, which is human creativity. And we're actually starting to see that the common stable diffusion everyone's talking about these days, in terms of, again, being able to generate lifelike images from a text prompt. So this is a kneeling cat night portrait, finely detailed armor, digital illustration of a steampunk flying machine in the sky with cogs and mechanisms, a photograph of an astronaut riding a horse. I don't know why this astronaut has 3 arms, though. I haven't figured that one out. But the point being that AI is now really working in the creative domains. And this is, everyone's kind of talking about the next thing, which is ChatGPT, right? And this is a really interesting instance for people in IT. So I spend half my time as a coder, for instance, and it's really changed the sort of work that I do. So for example, the sorts of languages I usually use are like JavaScript, React, those sorts of things. I don't do much with Python, but with ChatGPT, I can get it to write Python scripts that I can't write myself. So an example of this is, this might appeal to you, Jana, is there was this task that somebody told me recently is, to be discoverable, you have to be really active on social media. So you have to be doing all these Twitter posts and that sort of stuff. And I thought, hang on, maybe I can automate that process using ChatGPT. Maybe I can do like a Python script that actually does a search of all the most popular tweets by the people in my area and reword them using ChatGPT into something I'd say and repost it, right? And that would take me forever to program, but all I have to do in ChatGPT is actually write a prompt that says, write me a Python script, gives me the top ranked tweets from my five favorite Twitter users, and basically use ChatGPT for actually converting them to my words. Here it's done it, right? And it's actually spitting out in my words, paraphrased, really awesome tweets that I can just cut and paste, right? So it's automating these sorts of things. I don't need to know anything about Python to do that. All I need to do is actually, at a higher level, describe what I need. So this is just another one in React that's just giving the idea of how coding is really changing. So this is something I wanted to do something practical and actually write a script that does teleprompt. So here I'm saying, well, what I want you to do is, given my script, put it on the screen. It just did that. I'm saying, well, okay, put a black background, invert it. It's done that. And I say, well, okay, let's hook that up to basically my mouse so I can scroll through it. It's done it, right? So rather than me having to, program all this, and now I can just put that on my camera, and now I've got a working teleprompt in a matter of minutes without having to program anything. So this is a prompt telling me how to use ChatGPT, right? So this is the idea of what's happening with the IT industry and this is the scary thing, is if we go to the kind of work we do as programmers, it used to be really in this implementation. So somebody's given us a job, we spend all this time implementing it in terms of code. With AI and where things are heading with AI, it's moving away from implementation. So I don't need to be a really good coder. For the time being, I kind of still do. We haven't really got to that stage beyond sort of toy problems. It's not doing the complete architecture. It's helping me with components. But in terms of my work, it's doubled my productivity. So I don't need to actually hire other staff for getting the same amount of work done, because I can start, handing off parts of my work to ChatGPT and similar systems. So it's actually, and because of this being an exponential technology, we can see in the next, 2 to 3 years, a lot of the coding work will be overtaken by these artificial intelligence systems. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is, in the next 5 to 10 years, there is this amazing disruption happening in the IT area, and any area where there's this sort of low-level implementation level. So, for example, if you're a writer, writing blog posts or articles, or even, a graphic designer, that implementation level can be done really well with artificial intelligence. So we're seeing this migration away from that level to the conceptual level. So instead of me having to write all the code, I can just work on this area of concepts and ideas and say, okay, what I want is something that does this, and the AI will handle a lot of that grunt work. So this is kind of where things get scary in the IT world, is where are the jobs going to be?
And
yeah.
doesn't sound that promising. Just like looking through your intro into it and what artificial intelligence can do right now. But I guess I don't know. Is there any hope? Like, what jobs do we actually need? What are there? Is there any statistics? And what's going to happen?
I don't want to make predictions. That's the thing, is I guess in terms of the future, to answer that question is the sorts of stats that people used to say even before ChatGPT was like, there's nearly 1 billion jobs going to be lost in the next 10 years due to this automation. This was before ChatGPT came along. And what they used to say is, oh, well, we can just retrain them to be in the IT industry. And there will be all of these IT jobs, which of course now are disappearing, right? So these are sort of older predictions. But it was interesting to know is we could just retrain them. But the stats at that point in time is that they only really had a success rate of 0 to 15% at retraining people. So for example, in transport, I was a truck driver who was a truck driver all my life, and they're now automating transport. And it's like, what's my job going to be? And they say, well, just move to IT. And it's like, well, I don't have that background. I don't really have an interest in IT. I'm a 50-year-old truck driver. I'll be competing with 20-year-olds who love tech. So there's not that success rate in moving people into new careers that readily. And also, so I think the current heading is, it's quite scary in terms of some of the predictions were that 50%. This is a survey they did of all the AI sort of experts at the time, saying that all jobs will be replaced in 45 years. Scarier for COVID than COVID for developers. Yes. Yep. It's yes. Very scary times, right? So
40, just coming back to this, 50% of jobs will be lost in 45 years.
50%. There's a 50% chance that all of the jobs will be gone.
All of the jobs. Sorry, all of the jobs. So that's that pet state. Yeah. So I guess I still can make it to that pet state. Yeah.
That's right. So maybe in 45 years. Yeah. So the question in my mind is, we don't really know, right? I don't want to crystal ball the future. And when I hear other people talking about this next stage of disruption, people go, oh, well, we'll always be able to adapt. There's always going to be new jobs. And I guess the scary part is when we look back at other times in society where we've experienced this was, for example, in the first industrial revolution. But what actually happened was there was this transition period that it was really crap for humans. So machines sort of took these new roles, and workers were forced to leave their families and migrate to the urban areas. They worked incredibly long hours. They were poorly nourished. They lived in overcrowded conditions. There was disease and stress. So anyone who tells you, with technology, there's always this gradual and change and the jobs are going to be awesome, it's like, that's never really happened in these times of disruption in the past. So that's what scares me the most, is in terms of the next 10 to 20 years before they keep us as pets, is how are we going to navigate our way through this time of uncertainty and disruption. So all I'll say about...
few comments here, Scott, Harry saying, and I thought automated cars were an achievement. Field automated cars aren't quite there yet. I vote for socialized society.
Right.
Human need to apply.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So automated cars are there in particular areas. So there are certain careers that have been taken over. by automated transport, not day to day. There's all
Well,
of these
just
ethical problems.
warehouse example. Warehouse example. It's a
Yeah,
good example.
yeah,
Like you
yeah.
still like you
Also in
need the
mines and
yeah.
those sorts of
Yes.
areas where it'll very much automated these days. So there are elements of that taking over, and also drones, right? Drones are taking a lot of the delivery roles away from other delivery methods. So yeah, it is happening. There is disruption happening, but yeah, we're not all driving self-driving cars yet, which is probably a good thing. I don't know. But
and
anyway,
it's probably not far away as well.
yeah. So the only point that I'm making is that the future ahead is what they call VUCA. I don't want to crystal ball the future and say these are the skills that we need. This is the learn React because that's what's going to set you up for life. That we don't know. The question is that we're moving into this VUCA world where it is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the question is, well, how do we deal with that? How do we navigate our way forward when we can't actually think our way forward about what the careers are going to be? And I think that's the useful discussion to have in these times of uncertainty and complexity. So just to think this through, of how you actually deal with complexity. So a complex problem is one where I can't think it through. So the world itself is too uncertain or unknowable to me to sit down and do an analysis and realistically think, okay, in 5 years' time, these are what the jobs are going to be. So there's a lot of problems that are complex in nature that we can't predict. So things like making a best friend. I can't analyze, a room full of people and say, you're going to be my best friend for life. That doesn't work. Dealing with bullies is another complex problem. There's no rule book for determining what is going to work in a particular situation. You can't think those things through. Marriage is a similar one. I guess something like 67% of marriages are ending in divorce. It's all these sorts of complexity is everywhere, particularly in the job market. So startup companies, something like, 9 out of 10 startups fail. There is all of this unpredictability in our world, but there are skills that you can learn that actually help you navigate this uncertainty. And we can actually turn to nature. So one of the metaphors I really like is, you can ask me a question. Do we want
to? And strategy. You're gonna give it an strategy, yes.
The ant strategy. How do ants happen? Thank you for that question, Yana.
I can see the ants. So obviously, I can see the ants. So I believe the ant strategy is coming.
The ants have the solutions. Yes, the ants. So the interesting, I guess, analogy here is ants deal with complexity all the time. So they don't know where the food sources are in the same way that we don't know what the jobs of the future are. And their food sources change all the time, every day. So, they might have this food source and a dog comes along and steals it and takes it away, right? So they are always dealing with this changing environment, changing food sources. And how they actually deal with it is what they do is they balance what's called exploration and exploitation. So if they don't know where the food sources are, you see on the left 1,000 ants in 1,000 directions. So they're all sort of going out there searching for food on a superficial level. And then what happens is an ant starts discovering where the food is and leaves a pheromone trail. A few others follow that trail. And if there's food there, that trail gets strengthened. So over time, you see this convergence to various food sources. So they start to exploit their knowledge of what the food sources are actually out there. So when we're dealing with things like complexity, it's, well, how do we actually apply that same sort of search strategy to looking for work? So really, as I said, complex problems are problems that we can't think our way forward. An ant doesn't know where the food source tomorrow is going to be. We need to explore our way forward. So we use the real world for exploring what's actually out there rather than us hypothetically thinking these are what the jobs are going to be. We need to be actually out there gathering information. And we need to balance this process of exploration. So what might work, what's actually the new work in the field that's out there, and what's currently working for you. So you need to actually, as I said, keep up to date with latest trends and techniques, but keep doing what you're doing for the time being. That's the source of income. So if you break this sort of down, the sorts of strategies that you can employ is, as I said, on the level of search here is a superficial search in many directions. You need to be doing this. So that's, in your career, this is kind of like internet search, reading review articles, listening to podcasts, attending events, chatting with others. So this is 1,000 ants in 1,000 directions. So a superficial understanding of a whole range of topics or trends that are out there is kind of what we need as part of the search strategy. And then the next part of this, or part of this process, is a moderate investment in a number of areas. So given this, breadth first search, you sort of gradually converge. Okay, so there's a couple of areas here that interest me. I'll devote a little more time to exploring those. So I can do things like interviewing others about specific roles. Is this really something I'd enjoy? I could do volunteer work in that area. I could shadow other people in similar roles, do radical small collaboration with people. So it's like investing smaller amounts of work. So this isn't a full commitment to that area, but enough for me to actually explore what the opportunities are and if it's a good fit. And then you basically converge to this sort of deep commitment to a few areas. So you can do, paid work in the area, formal study in the area, but that's I guess my point here is, in these times of disruption, you really need to think about what your search strategy is. So how are you balancing exploration, which is this superficial search, with exploitation, which is this deep commitment to what's currently working for you? Yep. Any questions around that, Yana? Thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned this point. I think in a lot of my conversations, especially when we talk about any like career transition, it doesn't matter if it's a transition to different industry or promotion or anything. It's sort of, people need to follow the same strategy most of the time. And I think like what's really important as well, just reading about some job, not giving you the whole overview what it's about. And I think it's a big mistake that a lot of people make. They think like, oh, like, I wanted this position because, that's a position description that I saw on Seek. But unless you actually talk with the number of people in this position, you actually don't know what it's about.
That's right.
Like, honestly, it's always been my strategy. Like, I learned the quickest way if I talk with a few people. Like, if I'm thinking about something, I straight away think about a few people who might be experts in this, or people who maybe know someone. And I think it's always been like accelerating. Like, yeah, ChatGPT is great, and you can ask him questions, like But I still think like when you actually like just calling 5 people who been through that or like have some knowledge, that's give you completely like different overview on a lot of things. And I think maybe like now we need to remember about that like no matter how much technology around, there is all these people around us that we can ask for help and ask for advice as well.
Yeah, and I think you need to, when you dive into a role, I mean, it's funny when you deal with high school students, it's kind of this thing of they have an expectation of this is the job I need. Like, I'm going to go into nursing. Well, have you ever spoken to a nurse? Have you ever shadowed a nurse to see what nursing is actually like? Have you, done work experience in that area for, have you really explored that? What are other things that you might be interested in? So people converge really quickly on this is what I want to be when I grow up, having never actually experienced that culture, right? So, particularly now in these times of disruption, you're completely right, is what are the networks that you can tap into where you can actually find out what the opportunity, also what's the job like? Is it a good fit for you? But what are the opportunities that aren't actually, in the local paper or online? A lot of this networking is really important for finding the opportunities. Yeah.
And do you feel like the times when we can stay in the kind of same career are gone? Like, do you think that majority of people will have to shift somewhere, or like, what do you think?
It's interesting. So I won't say, someone I'm close to is a psychologist, and they're saying, well, at least my job's going to be safe. It's like, I don't know for how long. If you look at, ChatGPT can be trained, for example, given that it's exponential technology, you can train ChatGPT in specific areas. So I can basically give it, everything humanly known about psychology and, counseling, and theoretically I could come up with a pretty good coach, right? And then you could put that on, if you look at the latest avatars that are human-like, in the next few years, 5 to 10 years, we might have, online counselors that are just as good as real counselors. We don't know. But that's the what, I don't know what jobs are actually safe as in the near future. It's really interesting times. So as I said, it's
with, skills, like, before, as you mentioned before, we all talk about that creativity we will stay, that AI can't take the creativity away, or can't take like emotional intelligence, or some of these skills. Like, what the skills you think is still left for only humans?
I don't know, to be honest. It's kind of like, all of those things that people said, emotional intelligence. It's like, okay, well, we have things like ChatGPT that are communicating with us, and it's not and if you have a look at some of the other research that's out there, you can model emotions pretty easily, in terms of, I can basically clone my voice to sound exactly like me and put different emotions in there. So in terms of being able to emulate a lot of these things, we can kind of do that. As you said, creativity, again, that's one of the things that people are saying, oh, computers will never be creative like us. Well, we found that out recently, that they're kind of right. So that is the question, is I don't really know. And that's not, I don't like to crystal ball the futures in terms of what are the skills. What I'm more interested in is, well, how are you actually today looking for what the opportunities are that match what you're interested in? So this kind of moves on to my next point, is what we really need to navigate our way forwards is a clear idea of what we're looking for. The search strategy is, well, okay, let's be like ants and look for food. Well, what is the food that you're actually looking for? That's kind of the big question here, is what are you looking for? How have you actually clarified what it is? So, for example, what is your definition of great work? Have you sat down to think about what it is you really love? Because a lot of these skills that you need, such as programming or research, is going to change. But what is it about your job that you actually like, that's a transferable skill? So having a clarity around what it is you're looking for will help you with this search. If you have a clear idea of what are you passionate about, what are your values. But it goes even deeper than that in a sense. So the funny thing is, I'll just spend a couple of minutes on this point, is that the brain is kind of wired behaviorally for approaching pleasure and avoiding pain. Right. So when we think about good food, we're thinking, okay, well, what's going to give us pleasure? That's something I should be seeking. Right. So my definition of success is something that brings me joy. But the interesting thing in today's society is a lot of these things that are pleasurable are not actually good for us. And this is how society has actually changed over time. So even in our evolutionary history, generally approaching pleasure and avoiding pain was a good strategy. But if you think about something like food, right, the things today that are pleasurable are things like junk food that aren't necessarily good for us. Right. So we're addicted to pleasure. If we just follow the pleasure signal, we're actually going down this rabbit hole of things that aren't good for us. So a lot of the industries that have been developed today are tapping into this dopamine system and providing us things that give us pleasure that aren't necessarily good for us. So, for example, Netflix or whatever, that can bring you joy, but it might be taking you away from living a full, rich and valued life. Pornography is another example that, hits the dopamine system. But when you look at the research behind that, all it's really doing is reinforcing people to be on their own and becoming voyeurs. So it's actually disrupting your neural circuitry around your relationships, because it's actually conditioning you to be on your own, not having warm relationships with people. So in terms of, again, this idea, and there's a whole form of psychology around this called acceptance and commitment therapy, that's based on this idea that most of depression and unhappiness is due to experiential avoidance. So people doing things that give them pleasure and avoiding pain. So for example, I might might not want to go to the dentist because that will lead to pain, but it leads to long-term suffering if I avoid doing that sort of stuff. So even something like studying, right? I've got the choice of watching Netflix or studying. If I just go for pleasure, I'm not going to study, right? So this pleasure signal is not a good thing. So in terms of, again, thinking through what is a good food source, it's not necessarily the things that bring you joy, right? So you need to have this idea of, well, okay, if I'm out there trying to design a full, rich, and valued life, and this is where a lot of my coaching actually, we have conversations around this sort of stuff, is what's the dashboard of the sorts of factors you need to be optimizing to lead a full, rich, and valued life. So great work is one, health is another, warm relationships. I'll just say, according to the science, there was a study called the Harvard Grant Study, where it's the longest running study of adult development. And they tracked Harvard sophomores and their families for something like 80 years. And they found that the number one correlate of every metric of success, so that was health, money, everything, was warmth of relationships. So if you're trying to optimize for a full, rich, and valued life, you need to care about people. But funnily enough, when you coach executives, that's the number one thing they give up on. They give up on their health, they give up on their relationships to put that into their work. So in terms of, as again, standing back from this issue of, if you're out there trying to design a life, trying to do this ant colony optimization, you need a good search strategy, but you also need an understanding of what you're looking for. So what really is a full, rich, and valued life to you? What are your values? What is it that's really fundamental? And use that to guide the search strategy. So hopefully that makes some sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I guess coming back to previous slide, Scott, it's just really good to come back to, looking at the bigger picture, because sometimes we really get overwhelmed that we're thinking, oh my God, what next? Am I going to lose job? Like, what sort of skill I need to learn? And just running around trying to gain some next skill as soon as possible. Where sometimes I think it's about trying to take this step back and try to look at your whole life and what's important for you in life as well. And we do forget to do it, and try to jump to the next thing before actually looking to the bigger picture.
And that's really true at work, right? So we spend most of our waking hours actually at work, right? So designing a career that actually brings you joy and happiness is really fundamental to get that right. So it takes, as I said, this is kind of what I do for a living, is coaching leaders around these sorts of ideas of what is it that you really want? You're stuck in this busy time in your life. You have all these deadlines. We need to step you out of that and sort of say, well, is this aligned to my values? Am I giving up time with my family that is what's really important to me? So really this stepping back and really defining what it is you want is really crucial to a search strategy, defining your life, and basically designing your career. You need to understand what it is you're actually looking for. So I guess just in summary, an overview of what I was talking about today, the main thing is AI is this exponential technology. And as a result, the future of work is incredibly VUCA, so volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, just meaning that we don't know what the world's going to be like in 5 to 10 years. We've never really been in this position before, that we can't really predict what the work's going to be. So to think this through, we need a good search strategy, which is where we're sort of talking about ant colony optimization. So how do you personally balance this exploration to exploitation to actually look in the real world? What are the opportunities for you? But for me, the other question a lot of people don't talk about is, what is your definition of good food in this analogy? What is it that you're actually seeking that you can actually build into your life? So as you said, Jana, there are some points where your job, there's going to be this disruption, but these other elements you can still have in your life. So that, you have various sources that are giving you good relationships, health, or joy while you're struggling with your career. You do need that solid foundation for psychological well-being. So that's kind of my point is, if you're designing a life, really understand what it is you need to flourish, and that's going to help you with this search strategy of how are you using your time effectively.
Yeah, and that's, coming back to that point, if you lose a job, but you don't have any relationship or health or joy in your life, and you need to build back those things to get another job. So look, yes, I guess it's all about balancing all the things. But yeah, so I think it's also understanding about what's important to you, as you said, what's important for you overall. And yeah, is it life threatening to lose your job? So sometimes you think that it's like if you lose the job, it's basically end of our life. But in reality, it's probably not as life threatening as we think sometimes. And of course, yeah, we need to we have bills to pay. But there is other things that's important that can actually help us to go through those moments in life.
But that's the other thing, I guess, in terms of stability, right? So in terms of some people, I'm just trying to think of the metaphor or what's the words for it. It's called the curse of creativity. So some people just love to be creative, right? So writing music, doing painting and that sort of stuff. And so don't want a stable job. But that sort of career, just going with your points, is sort of the probability of being successful in any of those areas is near zero, right? But there's high rewards if you do. So it's like a high risk, high reward kind of career. How do you do that? So creative people actually need to be creative for their psychological well-being. Don't take that away from them, but you need that secure base of some sort of financial security of a job that you might not love and doing those creative aspects on the side. So I guess to take your point of it is useful to have that security while you're exploring for the optimal job. So it's nice to have a backup plan. So if you do lose your job, well, what's your plan B? I hate, there's a lot of people that say, oh, motivational speakers saying, don't have a plan B, just give it your all. But that's not safe to fail. In times of complexity and disruption, where 9 out of 10, startups are failing, I'd say, have a plan B, right?
I think it's always need to be plan B and plan C,
That's right.
I think it's always need to be a few backup options.
Yeah, and that's what ants do. They don't basically have one food source. If that disappears, they're totally screwed. It's like they're always exploring, they're always adapting, and that's what we kind of need in these disruptive times. Is what happens if your food source dries up? Have you actually been on the hunt for other things that are going to replace that? It's quite tough. Yeah.
Oh, we have a quite interesting comment here when we were talking about what sort of skills won't be replaced. And Lavina is saying, I'm pretty certain a mother's job cannot be replaced by which is, Lavina, I hate to say, but I feel it's arguable as well. I have a lot of girlfriends who have little kids now, and sometimes they just think like, I'm going insane. I can't be with my kid like 24/7. Like, I'm just like, I just take it from me. Just so I kind of can easily see the AI doing babysitting responsibilities easily.
Well, yeah, but the question is, do we want to? And that's where it comes down to. And I think when we're thinking around this, 20 or 50 years time, when AI has taken all the jobs, what kind of life do we want? And at the moment, the research says that warm relationships is the number one correlate of happiness and everything else. So if we're throwing out warm relationships, that's probably a bad thing. Right? So give me a mother any day.
Unfortunately, motherhood is not that valued under capitalism. You get paid much for it.
No, that's true.
To be honest, guys, I would love you, because next week we're going to talk about actually women in IT, and we're going to talk about the why aren't there more women in IT industry. So you definitely need to tune into that one, because I'm sure we're going to talk about the role of motherhood, and how AI can replace it for women to help to accelerate their careers. John has a question. Is it even worth committing to a big project like a computer science degree if the future is VUCA?
It's interesting. So a lot of universities, I work at universities, and they're now trying to go away from big degrees. So they're doing just-in-time learning, which is sort of micro degrees that you need. So if I did like, 3-year business degree, how much of that am I going to use, rather than give me a job and on-the-job training of these specific areas? So a lot of universities now are opting for these smaller courses where you can upskill in particular areas. And something like computer science, I did, my degree 25 years ago, and the language has changed, right? Most of what I learned has changed. And now with disruption, yes, there's certain things that you can learn in a 3-year degree, but I think what's going to happen is most programmers I know haven't got computer science degrees. They've learnt a lot of these skills. Even in, it's interesting, most CEOs that I know don't have an MBA. They got to where they were through on-the-job training. So I would actually question, what is the value of a lot of these big courses now that you can do just-in-time learning in an environment that's incredibly disruptive? So that is, it is food for thought.
And I think it's a massive topic in terms of how outdated education at the moment, and how this bite-sized learning became more and more popular. And obviously, big companies trying to create all these traineeship programs, apprenticeship programs, like boot camps and things like that. And, looks like that's part of the future. Those sort of workplace initiative, and the programs that the big companies running at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really this personalized education. So that's kind of what I do with half my time, is the best education is personalized. That's the fastest way to learn. And a lot of these big degrees that aren't personalized and it's not matched to your current context, you're not learning as much as if you were doing it and applying it to your real world context. So it is kind of an interesting point. Yeah,
I think it's need to be a whole separated live stream about the future of education for IT industry. And probably right. Not only for IT. I think it's in a lot of industries moving quite fast, but definitely, IT moving.
Well, you can check out my TEDx talk on AI and the future of education. I'll go into a lot of that.
We'll share it in the comments, guys, so you can go and check it out. Jason has a comment regarding the motherhood as well.
Yeah.
You can form the warm relationship with AI as well.
Well, and this is the interesting. I mean, we're kind of going off topic here, but it is an interesting sort of question. And a lot of AI these days, of course, is trying to emulate how the human brain works. So the artificial neural networks have distributed, billions of nodes that are trying to replicate what a neuron does. It's kind of like, well, okay, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's the same sort of learning principles that they're trying to implement. And looking at particular brain structures like vision, they're doing a remarkable job, right? But the point there goes that, okay, if we can emulate the human brain on a machine, right? So having a conversation with it is indistinguishable from having a conversation with a real person, like where ChatGPT is kind of going towards. Is that the equivalent of a human? Because a lot of our relationships will be with these artificial, entities. And is it, the argument is, well, okay, AI is going to take over, but they'll be our children, so it's kind of okay. But the philosophical debate is, okay, I have created this system that's taken over the whole world, replaced all our jobs, but does it feel things in the same way that we do? So there's one thing at a behavioral level to behave like a human, but does it, and as I said, this is a philosophical argument, does it actually experience the world in the same way? Does it feel pain? It can respond to pain, and we can ask if it feels pain and say, yeah, of course I feel pain, but does it really experience it? It's called qualia. Does it have that subjective experience of emotion the same way? Or is it just this, hollow sort of, entity that's just behaving or mimicking human reality? So when we're saying, okay, yes, we can have warm relationships with AI, definitely, but is that the same as having a warm relationship with a conscious being? I don't know. People won't be able to differentiate between the two, but I think there is an important distinction in terms of, I'd like to actually think that what I'm connecting with actually feels something for me. It's not just mimicking the feelings, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But sometimes we don't know what other people feel as well. Like, do I experience pain the same way that you experience pain? Or you're just saying that you feel
yeah. Do you really like me, or are you just smiling because anyway? But yeah,
it is a philosophical question. I think one other thing that probably technology didn't get yet, it's a smell as well. We don't talk about smells as much, but I think it's the only thing that we can't really transport digitally just yet, like easily. So we can create some sort of artificial smells, but it's not the same as the real smells. I think like unconsciously, when we other humans, we also, not only connecting on a like linguistic level, visual and, audio, but it's also those, kinesthetic
like pheromones and things like that.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a big thing. And for obviously, the babies and stuff, they smell their mother, they know that. Yeah. So there's a lot of areas of that not many people are not as much research been done actually on that area. I believe with the smells, it's still a bit of a gray area in a way, because unconsciously it affects us so much, but we don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's true. And I don't know, it's kind of like everyone's so used to being online now. So most of my kids actually spend most of their time with their friends actually online. They rarely see them face to face. And that's kind of the new norm is, we're actually going into this virtual reality or the metaverse where people are actually spending time with each other in this virtual world rather than face to face. Which is, a perfect environment for AI to be in and be companions in that environment. But as I said, it's an interesting times ahead.
Jay said, does that matter if you can't tell the difference? What difference does it make? Yeah.
Well, as I said, you can't tell the difference. To a lot of people, they will project to these entities and feel the same thing. But from my personal perspective, I would hate to think that we've replaced humans with something that doesn't actually feel in the same way that we do. That seems, if they're going to take over, I like to think that we've actually created something that is equivalent to life. Whatever, but that's my personal opinion.
Yep. Yeah, would be nice if they actually feel the same. Yeah. Anyway, Scott, I'm cautious about the time. We only have 2 minutes left. We need to pick the winner for today, a virtual chat with the speaker. So you can choose someone who asks, the most interesting question, or just do the random, like this is a winner.
Well, I think I'll just Jason there has asked like 99% of the questions. So yeah, I think he's the honest.
Yeah, and I just quickly remind that next week it's the 8th of March, so it's International Women's Day. So, and that's why I invited a few women on the stream, and we're just basically going to talk about women in IT industry, why there is not that many women in technical jobs, and things like, is there still a pay gap, and do the women actually want to be engineers in general? So that will be our conversation next week. So make sure to tune in. I'm going to ask some controversial questions as well. And Jason, you are you sure you want to went to live? Anyway, Jason, you taking the time, you can continue that conversation with Scott offline. I'll make sure I'll connect you on LinkedIn, so you can discuss all the things about do we wanna artificial intelligence alive or not. And
God.
can't wait, yeah. So, and Scott, just to finish this live stream, can you please share with us your favorite inspirational quote, or just, like some sort of statement that you live your life by, or something like that?
Oh, Jesus.
Just put you on the spot. Yeah.
Well, okay, so my inspirational quote or whatever is Carpe Diem, which is seize the day. There's the movie Dead Poets Society that I find incredibly inspirational. It's like, yeah, you only live once, and we don't take advantage of that fact. We're not caught up in living, and I think that's my philosophy is Carpe Diem as much as you can.
Yep, enjoy the present moment. So
That's right.
Levin is saying thank you guys, everyone, for joining us tonight. Make sure to like and share this video, especially if you enjoy it. So make sure like it and comment and share and all the stuff, and it, because obviously if you're doing it, I keep doing my live streams as well. Thank you so much, Scott. That's been great. I'm sure everyone learned something new, or at least start thinking about differently about what is coming. Vika saying thank you for a wonderful session. Thank you, Vika. Thank you, guys. Harry saying thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for all your warm words. Thank you, Scott, again. And I'll see you next week on Wednesday.
Cool. Thank you, guys.